scouting live games and practices. Again, this is from my mentor and buddy, Phil Savage, who's as detailed as it gets when it comes to scouts. Has mentored a lot of the top evaluators in the NFL. Several general managers really learned under Savage. And so this is from 2003 from a scout school. We used to do this with the Baltimore Ravens. Every scout would have to make a presentation to the group. We would all get handouts, take notes, and it was something where we could all kind of learn from one another and grow. So this was, I believe this is Phil's report or his presentation from 2003. So he talks about going to games first. Okay, Buck, you're going to go to a game and you're going to go scout a game. So this is something, if you're an aspiring scout or somebody that's interested in this, we talk about getting on Game Pass, which is free, NFL.com/Game Pass. You can watch the NFL tape, the all 22, and learn that way. Well, there's also an opportunity for you to go to games. When college games open back up and you want to get a chance to go watch them, you can go on your own little scouting trip here. So here's what you need to do. The gear. This is what you need to bring. Start with your credential and your parking pass. Hopefully you've got a press credential. Scouts are able to get those press credentials. Binoculars, radio, because you'll put your radio in, put your little earbud in, and you can listen to the home call because you'll learn some things. They have insight into that team, having been around them all the time. You'll get some background information on some players that you can jot down a couple notes while you're listening to the radio call, watching the game. Stopwatch, which you can use for touch to toe, hang time for the specialists. Got to have your notepad, obviously. This is back in 2003. Said you had to bring a recorder because if you can't write down, if you're going to go down on the field and you can't write anything down, you could at least record voice memos because of the rain. Obviously, everybody has it on their phone now, so it's a lot easier. Pencils or pens, and then you'd have your list of players that you're scouting for your team. So if you're a West area scout, and let's say Ohio State's playing USC, you're responsible for the USC players. So you would have your list of the USC prospects, but then you would also have who the prospects were on the other team. Because once you finish the fall, once you got the cross checks, Buck, you would get assigned teams that you would have seen outside your area. So you'd have at least your body types and you have a little bit of look at some of those guys.
Yeah, no, it's funny. In looking at this list, I'm making notes. The one area where I really struggled, DJ, I never could use binoculars when I was scouting. Like for whatever reason, it never really was a thing that I was really comfortable. Like whatever, I kind of like to see the entire field. The radio makes sense because I've learned like even I like watching TV copy of games because and I know being on this side, there's a production meeting. In that production meeting, coaches give the TV analysts some insight that gives them perspective on what they say during the telecast. So I like hearing that. Stopwatch, the special team stuff, being able to do it. The notepad. It's funny that you bring up the notepad because if you have a number of players, I would have almost like a design flip card where if I have 6 guys on USC's offense to watch, wide receiver, running back, offensive line, I would have them in little boxes. So rather than having to make individual notes all over the place, it's all right there, and I can quickly make a little note or nugget. And the recorder is a game changer on your phone because when you use a recorder, your eyes never have to leave the field. I had an old scout tell me that very early. Hey, think about using your voice recorder so your eyes never need to leave. You can always look at what's going on and just make those notes. And then when you get back to your hotel room, then you can kind of transcribe the notes from your memo to the notebook.
No doubt. That's a great call on using the recorder, and you get back, you got plenty of time in the hotel room to knock that stuff out. All right, pregame arrival time. You want to get there about 2 hours before kickoff, get a chance to visit with coaches. Sometimes you can visit with them the night before if you're the away team. Sometimes you find out what hotel they're staying at. You can either stay in that hotel or just get over there and know they might have a little bit of a window there to meet with you. So you get a chance to visit with maybe the away coaches the night before the game, visit with some of the home coaches on the field. Actually, coaches can be very relaxed before the players come out in the field. You can get some good information there. Look at the depth charts and any add-ons. You're looking for any senior starters. So if they're going to be draft eligible, obviously the seniors are all draft eligible. So any senior starter, even if he wasn't given to you as a prospect, if you're at a Power 5 school and you're starting, you're going to be responsible to put in a report on that player. So keeping an eye on that. You can read through the press release for any additional information they might have there. Go down to the field before the game, Buck, and as the players come out, we'd body type them. So you'd look at their bodies, what do they look like, so you can describe it in your report. And I always did it, really, you can get descriptive with the terms, but then I did a number system where I just did we used a 3 through 7, which was 5 is average, 6 above average, 7 is excellent, 4 below average, 3 poor. So really just a 3 to 7 scale that we used. And I think it was 3 to 7 just because 5 was just an average, so you could have that as an average. I would look at I'd give their lower body a grade, their upper body a grade, and then overall. So body type, if a guy was a 7-7-7 body type, like it was pristine, beautiful body type. But you get down on the field because you got to get a chance to look at these guys because you can't see that on the tape. You might see a guy's just he doesn't carry his weight well, or somebody looks a little bit better than you thought. Then you're looking at specific skills. Quarterbacks. You might be watching a team, especially with the college game now, where you see so many bubble screens and you don't get a chance to see him really power the ball, some of these hole shots. Well, in warm-ups, usually they'll run through such a variety of routes. You get a chance to watch quarterbacks throw live. You get a chance to see what kind of juice, what kind of velocity they can generate, as well as how accurate they are on some of those. It's just, and Phil wrote down here, it's taking a snapshot. It's not the be-all, end-all in terms of an evaluation and warm-up, but you get a feel. You can go down there and watch DBs go through their change of direction drills. You get a feel. Is he loose? Is he fluid? Is he tight? You can get some things out of that warm-up.
Yeah, it's funny, man, a lot to unpack right there. One thing, and I think all scouts should understand this, if there's a top quarterback in your area, you have to see him live. It is mandatory that you go see him live, that you go watch him play in a game. The reason why you want to get a chance to see him play live is you want to do a skills assessment. You want to get a true feel for the velocity on his throws, what throws he makes. Some of that is you get from watching him in pregame. Hey, can he throw the deep out? Can he throw things that he may not throw in the game? You also want to see how he interacts with his teammates. I want to get a sense of what is his pregame routine like. Having been around great quarterbacks, they all are very meticulous and detailed about how they go about getting themselves ready to play. So I want to check that out. When you talk about like DBs and other guys, I just kind of like to see how guys go through their work in pregame. With DBs, I want to see how fluid and quick are they tight when it comes to their back pedal, change direction, when they move around. Do they approach pregame with a level of seriousness, or are they kind of Joe cool, where everything is kind of too cool for school? They don't really pay attention, and then they're going to turn it on game day. It doesn't really mean a lot. But for me, as I'm trying to really learn the player, I'm just kind of note everything that they do, trying to get a feel for, okay, this is how he came out. Guy was early. He was the first one on the field. I saw him go through this very intricate routine to get ready to play. And then he played well. For me, okay, his preparation really carries over. And I just kind of want to know everything that I can get from him based on how he goes about his warm-up process.
Yeah, to me, you can learn. There's things to learn. Everything is an opportunity, which, again, I'll get off the soapbox here, but just real quick. But that's why I don't understand when people say, I'm not going to go to his pro day because we're just going to do a private workout with him. Well, if I'm getting ready to spend millions of dollars on a player, any extra exposure I can get to them in their environment, or especially around their teammates, to study him and see how he acts with those guys, I'm going to take advantage of it. I'm going to get my private workout as well so we can see how he does in our system and what we would ask him to do. But why would you turn down a free opportunity to be around these guys? I read a leadership book, and it talked about the hiring process, and it was studying different companies. And I don't remember what this book was, but it talked about the success rate of guys sticking and not having to replace them in a short period of time was directly correlated to how many points of contact they had with them before they hired them. So you get to know somebody better. Think about it, just like any relationship. If you be around somebody 12 times instead of 2 times, you're going to know what you're getting.
Man, it's funny. I have a great story about that. Years ago, going to a pro day at LSU, this is when Jamal Adams was only a freshman. But I knew him from the Nike tour or whatever. And there was a top corner that was coming out that year. And being able to not only watch him, but to ask Jamal, hey, man, what do you know about this guy? Coach, he's not it. He's not the one. Yeah. And he was talking about a player who ultimately was drafted around the 2nd round, but never really played at that level and was out the league shortly thereafter. And so not only do you want to go to see guys every opportunity, but you want to be able to see how their teammates interact with them, and maybe they can give you some more intel and background on what the player is and what he could be when you bring him in.
No doubt. This is, again, these last notes. Think again now, this is 2003. During this time frame, a lot of times you would go watch tape at the school on a player, and then you would go to a live game. Well, that live game tape, you might not get access to that tape for 5 weeks. Like there would be that type of a lag before that would get in the system. So there was more importance on getting this information because you couldn't get the tape right away. Now, I think a little bit of that's changed. Some of the importance. I think now going to live games to me is more about seeing guys, how they move, seeing them in their environment, getting information. I think that was more of more of what we get out of it right now. But think back to that time. Phil broke it down from the first half to the second half. In the first half, you get a general feel for the game, looking for one-on-one matchups by down and distance. So if it's 1st and 10, you might watch the interior offensive lineman because you're going to see how they do. It could be a rundown there. You get in 3rd and 8, you could focus your attention more on the corner wide receiver matchup, what those guys are doing. Second half, at halftime, this was always helpful for me. I would have my notes. So I'd have, say you have 8 prospects at a school. And you'd get to halftime, I would look and see, okay, man, I've got a lot of information. I feel pretty good about how this guy moves and how they use him and what they do with him. But this other guy, man, I don't have anything on him. So you fill in the gaps in the second half for guys you didn't get a chance to get a good feel for in the first half as you go through that. And then the post game, listen to the press conference with the top players. After a tough loss, after a big win, you get a little bit of a feel for their personality. And then kind of, look over the stats and then off you go. But that was kind of the way you would scout a live game, Buck. But again, I think now with the ability to get to the tape right away and to be able to sort the tape. The other thing you used to have to do, you have to find out where these guys were on special teams. Because you don't want to have to go climbing through all the special teams tape and be like, I don't know, does this guy play on teams or not? That could take a long time. It's a needle in a haystack trying to find some of these guys. Now, with the technology, I can type in the player's name into the computer, punt, kickoff return, boom, it'll populate just the snaps he played in those situations. So it's a lot easier now.
Yeah, it is a lot easier. I'm going to go back to a couple things points that you made. The one-on-one matchups are absolutely critical. And a lot of times when I'm picking a game, with those matchups in mind. So if I am going to see, let's just say like Trevor Lawrence next year, I want to see Trevor Lawrence play against the best defense that I can see in that area. Whoever that is, I want to see him play in the best game so I can see him play against the best because I want to see how he reacts and responds to either a high-end pass rusher, a high-level corner, whatever that is. I also want to dig down and see how the guys bounce back from poor plays. I worry a little bit how they play, but more so I'm looking for, what's that resilient moment? What do they look like if my top corner gives up a big play early in the game? How does he play the rest of the game? If he's been a guy that has always been a bump and run corner, does he back off and play off coverage the rest of the game because he gave up one? Or does he go right back and do exactly what he's done in all of those games? I just think when you go to games, there's so much that you can find and glean from watching guys play in person that I don't know why guys would turn down the opportunity to go to a game where you can really feel and sense how a player is and does he leave an impact on the game.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot you can gain from that in terms of the personality of the player. It's not just the performance, but it's the personality. That comes out when you're around him in that live game setting. At the practice, Buck, just real quick here, you're looking at the body types, which we talked about. You do the same thing at a practice. Work habits, attitude, coachability, those things you can pick up on the practice field. Critical factors and position specifics, things that you might not have seen in the tapes. Now, let me give you an example of how analytics can work together with traditional scouting. So we could look at a player like Josh Kelly, right? Joshua Kelly, running back from UCLA, who got picked by the Chargers. Now, we saw Josh Kelly at the Senior Bowl do a really nice job in one-on-ones and pass protection as well as running routes. We didn't get to see him do a lot of that at UCLA. Let's say he gets nicked up and doesn't play in the Senior Bowl. You can be in the draft room, right? And you have your analytics people and you have your scouts. And you can have analytics people, which to me is a great opportunity for them to say, hey, red flag, this kid does not have a lot of catch production. Our running backs have to be productive in the passing game or they lose tremendous amount of value. And then the scout who is in the school can say, listen, I went to the school, I talked to the coaches. They had such a heavy workload on him, they wanted to give him a breather. But I've seen this kid practice over the last 3 years. And in practice, I've seen him in one-on-one pass block. I've seen him in one-on-ones, run routes. This kid has natural hands. He can separate. He's got a good feel for it. You didn't see it show up in games because they didn't ask him to do it, but he can do that. Just as the same, you could look at a corner and say, man, I don't know if this guy can play the ball. He doesn't get challenged much. He had a big reputation. The other corner stinks, so he gets all the action. I don't know if this guy can play the ball. Well, the scout can say, I watched him in one-on-ones every multiple times over his career. This guy can find and play the ball, or maybe this guy can't find and play the ball. But that's how, to me, analytics and scouting can kind of work together.
Yeah, they can work together like that. And I've always believed that the front office that is able to meld high-end analytics with great film studiers, great what I call scouts, they'll be the ones that go to the next level, because all analytics do, they give you information. They provide information. And then if you have a scout who can provide context, then you can paint the total picture. It is also important when you talk about the area scout. The area scout has the obligation to make sure that he not only knows the class that's coming out, but that he begins to understand who's coming down the pipeline. So when you talk about maybe a Joshua Kelly isn't really a great example, but let's say Josh Kelly was a guy that spent his entire career at UCLA. Well, if I've gone to that school and I've seen him start, I notice him in the practice field, I now have 3 years of intel on, hey, I've seen this guy progress each and every year. When he first got there, he couldn't really catch the ball well, but I've seen him from his sophomore to his junior year really improve. And when you watch him in practice, he catches the ball with the wide receivers off the just machine. Mm-hmm. You can give that context that just adds more flavor to the report and the evaluation.
Yeah, and again, the last thing I would add on that is another example, too, of how relationships can be so advantageous in the personnel community, because I can give you an example. Gosh, I want to say it was Brockers. It might have been Brockers, or maybe it was one of those defensive tackles who did not have a ton of sack production, right? So I believe it would have been Brockers or somebody else, but he came off the field in a lot of sub situations because they had a good group, and so he didn't get an opportunity to rush as much. Well, our defensive line coach had a great relationship with the defensive line coach of the college. So they gave us access to watch all of his one-on-one pass rush for like the whole season at that school. So we got a chance to watch rep after rep after rep of this guy rushing the passer. And we're like, okay, this guy's got some tools. He needs to be cleaned up a little bit, but there's something there. And again, I don't remember if this was Brockers or somebody else, but it was a defensive lineman who didn't have a lot of production and didn't have a lot of opportunity. But when you have that relationship to get that access to that information, again, analytics ask the right questions. That's what leads you to the right questions. And then it's about the scouting side being able to provide the right answers. And that's how you can get to a good evaluation.
Man, that's what it is. It's using everyone in the building to come to the right thing. And so it's not analytics versus traditional scouting. It's that plus this traditional scouting. That's how you get the best answers. So you should use it, and there's a way to use it. I think we just have to be forward thinking when it comes to it.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, that was fun. We got to nerd out a little bit there. I don't know. I know a lot of people are interested in the scouting stuff. I know some other people just want the NFL or the college information. So apologies, but you can tell we get kind of worked up and get excited when we talk about the old scouting stuff, Buck.
Yeah, no, it always works, man. I think we're always learning. We always want to be better or at our best when it comes to being evaluators. But the other thing that you and I have talked about, we want to pay it forward. We want the next generation of scouts to have what we have been given, because we've been around great evaluators, Hall of Fame level evaluators. So you want to pass on some of that information that you've been given.
No doubt. The discussions are always fun on here. I hope you guys enjoy it. I know we get a lot of feedback from buddies around the league, and hopefully they got a kick out of that.